some people get depressed with trauma. I to help you really kind of create some create a better emotional life inside. Or if I'm angry, maybe it means I've experienced injustice. That's the common denominator for me. What are you feeling, and then what do you do? I am always just trying to understand what God loves about him, and
that's good.
Who God created him to be. I'm like the psychologist, right? You're kind of a deep thinker. You don't always come up with things quick. So this will be a good challenge for me.
I feel it. It's a nice freestyle. Freestyle. All right. Welcome to the Flip the Switch podcast, where we flip the switch on everything. And I do mean everything from relationships to fatherhood, motherhood, financial assistance, and freedom. You want it, we talk about it. You want to listen to it. That's what we're here for. This is not just our podcast. This is y'all podcast. We have a very special guest. We have a very special guest by the name of Chris Waters. He is a psychologist. This man is great, and I'm so glad that you came on today. Thank you for coming on again. We got connected through a mutual friend, and I'm very grateful for Paul. Shout out to Paul Kim. He was one of our guests in the Fatherhood series. The man is great. Like that. Actually, man, Drake, now that you kind of mentioned it a few episodes ago, that's another massive splinter right there.
Yeah.
That's a massive splinter right there for sure. Yeah. That man will make you a ninja too. Yeah. Shout out to the Ninja Turtles.
A Hokage in the flesh, man.
So true.
So listen, as everyone knows, we do a highlight of the week. Let me say this real quick. Thank you for all those patrons and non-patrons alike, game changers, as we call them. Listen, I appreciate you guys.
Shout out to y'all. Shout out to the game changers.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all for holding out on the week. Cause y'all could have been like, man, we about to bounce. Y'all tripping. Y'all missing out on weeks now. Like, y'all could have been acting like spoiled kids. All right, I wouldn't be mad at it. But again, I just appreciate you guys for holding out on just a week, allowing us, myself and DeAndre Official to just have a conversation with you guys. Now that one was for free, but if you want the rest of the episodes that's coming in the future, you're gonna have to become a game changer, as we call it. That is our family. That is our community. That's our community name, Game Changers. So, with that being said, Chris, need you to go ahead and just give us a little bit about, your business. This man is a psychologist. He was on a documentary that is on Hulu right now. It came out last year, 2019. I believe it was in September. It's called Many Sides of Jane. Definitely a great documentary, particularly that it's on DID, basically multiple personalities disorder. For those that don't know, they changed the name. That part, I don't know if you guys mentioned it or if they mentioned it in the documentary, why they changed that name specifically. But regardless, it was definitely a good insight to that particular I don't want to call it an issue, but just that particular
disorder. Yeah, because I had never heard of it.
Yeah, some people, they've never heard of it, and then some people have, but they did address this. Some people, when they think of it, they think of somebody killing someone or something dangerous. And so for this documentary, I felt like it was something that was really more insightful to, it's, not everybody that may have this disorder is like that or whatever. And let's kind of look at it from a different perspective. It's not just this. It's not something to be scared of or to be frightened of and like, oh my God, like, nah, like it happens, you know what I'm saying? Just like any other disorder, it happens, you know what I mean? And people need help to get through it. But talk to us about you and your business. You have a business with being a psychologist, and you also work at a hospital. Talk to us.
Yeah. So I'm a clinical psychologist. Right now I work at a hospital in Washington called Klickitat Valley Health, and I work kind of in a clinic with other doctors, and I help people with mental health. So if somebody goes to their doctor and they're like, oh, I'm depressed or I'm not feeling good, then the doctor will refer them up to me and I'll do some counseling with them, or I'll do some testing to figure out if they have a mental disorder or not. And then I do that full time. And then on the side, I have a business where I see people virtually. So I see them on something kind of like Zoom, but it's encrypted, so it can't be hacked. And I do therapy with people over the internet. Now I have to have a license in the state where I see my patients, because that's the law. So I see some people in Oregon and in Idaho, where I used to live. So I do therapy over the internet.
Has it always been virtual, or is it just because of the quarantine?
For me, this business has always been virtual. I actually don't have a home office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So when I did Many Sides of Jane, I lived in Idaho. I'd lived there for 7 years, and I was at a practice there. And then when I moved to Oregon, I decided to keep some of my patients, and I do it virtually. And then I got a few more from Oregon. So that's how I see people for therapy.
Okay. Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
Very nice. So for those that may be interested for any reason, how can they reach you? How can they get in touch with you and set up, meetings or consultations or anything?
Right. So I'm usually pretty full in my business, and I focus a lot on people with dissociative identity disorder. So I don't take as many kind of everyday people in my home business anymore, because there's so many people after the documentary that have DID that don't have good care, that I mostly focus on that. But I do see a few people who don't have DID, and usually the best way to get a hold of me is to you can look me up on Psychology Today. So that's like a referral website. You go to psychologytoday.com, and then you would just type in Chris Waters, and then I have, it's kind of my profile. And I don't advertise a ton. Mainly I get my referrals through, doctors or other people I know. I know a lot of people are really into advertising and having a big presence online. I always think when you're a psychologist, you kind of want to be referred through somebody else so that you have kind of a good relationship with the person. So it's
that makes sense.
Not everybody thinks of psychology that way, but for me, if I get a referral through their doctor or through their family member, I feel like we're already starting to create kind of a sense of community a little bit. And I think that the healing goes a little farther that way. But again, we all have to make businesses our own way. That's just the way I make my business.
Right. Absolutely.
I can understand it though. That makes sense.
Yeah, no. I definitely agree with that too. I think that that's what kind of helped us even a little bit. Was just Paul tagging you in the comment, and we went into the inbox from there. You referenced Many Sides of Jane. I watched it. Again, great documentary for anybody that's interested. If you're into documentaries, just really good documentaries, just insightful. It may not necessarily be that you have a particular subject matter in documentaries, but you just like a good documentary. That's definitely a great one to watch. It's on Hulu. Many Sides of Jane. Go check it out. With that said, let's get into this to this random opinion. We're gonna have fun today. I have a good feeling there will be a good debate. Oh, I did forget to warn you. Dre likes to argue. He loves debates. He probably should have been a lawyer or something, or or found
I used
a way
to want to
into.
be. I used to want.
He did. Yeah, I found that out. It's funny. I just remembered the other day I was listening to one of our episodes or something, and I just remember I at one point did think about being a lawyer.
Oh, you too?
But then I was like, nah, I'm good. So, but Chris, if you got a random opinion, if you got an opinion about anything, by all means, let's share this.
Oh gosh, yeah. What would be easy to argue with Dre about? I'm trying to think.
Oh, food is definitely one. Food is definitely one. Food is definitely one.
Let's see. I would say, man, what am I going to put my name on here? I don't know. I'll do a simple one. I think sushi is the best food in the world.
Really?
Interesting. Okay.
So I can't really argue because it just
Wait, hold on,
it
hold up.
seems okay.
Hold
Go
up.
ahead.
Wait,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I need him to share why. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to say I completely disagree with him because I've had sushi,
Right.
but I don't want to. I can't just be like, oh, I absolutely agree with him either. So
Go.
we gotta talk. I need to hear why. Like, what is your perspective on this? Where does this come from?
Yeah. Then you can pick me apart. Very good. All right. I think I like, man, it just has a little bit of everything. First of all, you get it raw. You know, the rice is cooked. So you got the raw fish sometimes, the rice is cooked. Then sometimes they're dipping it in stuff and frying it. I mean, you just get all kinds of textures and flavors. You're getting like fish from different parts of the world. I really like eel. I just think you get this, I don't know, you get something that has like a little bit of everything, and you get these, all these different kind of fish you can find in all different kinds of places. So it's, I don't know. I love all of it. I love the texture, like I said, and I love that it's raw and it's cooked and sometimes it's fried. I mean, you get everything.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, he made that hard to even debate with.
Because I like to argue objectively, and I can't because I've never even tried sushi. I'm gonna be honest.
What?
I've always looked at it.
Mean?
The idea grosses me out. Just the
Right.
idea
What is wrong?
that it's raw fish grosses me out.
You know,
I've seen it up close, and people have tried to tell me to try it. I can't do it.
Listen,
I can't bring myself to do it.
There are these great times where I'm like, man, Dre is so different. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't colorize him. You know what I'm saying? You can't say he's black just because he has dark skin. You know what I'm saying? Like, because he's so different from the norm. But then you go and say stuff like this, and it's like, how, Sway? Like, what do you?
Yeah.
How have you not tried sushi, bro?
Well, for one thing, I grew up in
great.
Louisiana, so Louisiana doesn't have a whole lot of,
I'm sorry, but you have no excuse. You've been out here since what? 2011? You've been out here since 2011, right?
10.
So, okay, even worse. Even worse. Right. You've been out here for you've been out here for a whole decade. Like you've been you have no excuses. Yeah. You have no excuses. It's been a whole decade now. You have no excuses. I'm sorry. Well, I can't let you pass with this one.
Right. And you know Paul Kim, and he eats all kinds of things, right? And he loves. How do you say you get mentored by Paul Kim?
Chris is not making this any better for you right now.
You got me on that one. It's crazy too because I've tried a lot of different foods with him, just never sushi. We've never gotten that far.
Yeah.
Now it's been.
So I grew up in Idaho, and we don't really have all that many different kinds of food. So I didn't have sushi till I was in my 20s, and then it took me a little while to like it, and then now I really love it. But I definitely moved out of Idaho because I was like, man, I got to experience some more things in the world, even just food.
Yeah.
Listen. I didn't try sushi myself until I was 20 something. So that's fine.
Right.
Dre, come on, man. Like you have to go try sushi today.
Yeah.
Like
you guys get it today.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't care if you go to Walgreens and get the real kind. Right. Even just because even the non-real kind is still good. Like Walgreens sushi is pretty good. So now I do
a show at a sushi bar and make him eat it.
Yeah, see, that's what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to do a whole episode. We got the GoPro, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna have to do a whole episode at a sushi bar. We're gonna have to find one in LA.
Social support.
For the sake of the podcast, I'll do it. I'll do it for the sake of the podcast. That, or
I'll bring you out here. There's a sushi bar out here somewhere. I'll come down, drive you, and everything. I'll have the gas money. I'm telling you, like this is not right. Justice. No justice, no peace. Hey man, that was a great opinion.
That was a good one.
I can't disagree with that. Like after you broke that down, you get a little bit of everything. Fried, cooked, I mean, unless you just don't like fish.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good with that. I
All
won't
right, all
argue
right.
that. I won't argue that.
Yeah,
I only
I'm not gonna
argue
argue with
Dre
it
for
either.
not trying it.
I won't argue against it though, because I haven't tried it. So I'll be honest in that opinion. I can't
I
say it's
will
bad.
say this.
I respect
will
that.
say this. Anybody that has tried it and calls it trash or anything of the sort, them fighting words. You can't talk about sushi like that. That's one good dish right there. That's some good food.
Right.
So listen, I'm glad I let you have that opinion today, because I would have never came up with that. And then I would have never known Dre's ever tried it, and then I wouldn't be able to get on his case. So yeah, I'm with that. Sushi is definitely. Now I still won't necessarily agree that it's the best dish in the world, but it is definitely a great dish.
Right.
I can eat that anytime.
Yeah.
Morning, noon, night, whatever. So
right.
it is definitely a great dish for sure.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? Maybe I'm not as humble as Dre. I'm saying it's the best in the world, but I have not tried every food in the world. So that is my opinion.
No,
that's still
strong
your
on it,
opinion.
because I gotta come at somebody if it's trash when I try it. I gotta come at somebody. So stand strong on your opinion. I'm like, Chris, he said this is the best in the world.
You're not gonna come at me with that. Like I said, I ain't gonna agree with that. I don't know if sushi is the greatest dish in the world, but it's definitely a great dish. Like I said, I could eat it noon, night, morning, middle of the night, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and any food that you can eat at any time, like no matter what time it is.
Yeah, big props
I'm
to a
with
food
that.
that you can eat at any time. That's good though.
That's definitely a great dish. Yeah. Like, yeah. So listen, so we got some questions. We got some questions for you. Right. I definitely tried to make sure that we had questions that hopefully people are thinking about, or people are maybe are trying to figure out or something. But yeah, we're gonna get into this, and for those that are listening, hopefully you guys can really. I got a feeling y'all gonna need to take some notes, especially if you are dealing with mental health in the sense of kind of struggling to maintain a good mental health. So yeah, let's get into this. Well, no, Dre had a question that let's get into one of Dre's questions first.
So I the question that I had, I think I had the wrong term. I think I had psychiatrist down. But so what exactly is a psychologist? What exactly is the details of your job? What do you specialize in?
Right. So yeah, it's a great question, because even some of the doctors I work with, sometimes they don't know, right? So a psychologist is basically it's somebody that has goes to school and they get a doctorate. So we're not a medical doctor. You get a doctorate in psychology. And what we can do is we usually do therapy, and then we do a lot of diagnosis, and then we do like testing. So we can give you some tests and understand if you have like learning disabilities, if you have a certain types of mental illness, like we can really kind of pinpoint that down. And then a lot of us do therapy as well. And in therapy, we try to help you talk through, if you're depressed or anxious, or if you have other conditions, what are some tools that you can use? Where might some of those problems come from, like from your past or from something bad you've been through? And we try to help you really kind of create a better emotional life inside, so you can feel better about life, kind of pursue your goals, make sense of some things that happened in the past. And that's kind of the goal.
Okay. So cool. Psychologists, they mostly focus on the emotional part of life?
Yeah. They focus on the emotional part. Yeah. Now, I mean, it's such a big field. There's some people that are psychologists that focus a lot just on your thinking patterns. So there's, some people focus, I guess the best way to put it is, most of the time the psychologists will kind of try to come at your problems from your thinking patterns, your emotions, your behaviors. And then sometimes they're referring you to go get like medications if your brain chemistry is a little off. So we would send you to a psychiatrist, maybe if you need medications, if your brain chemistry is so far off that you can't really function very well, right?
So you described it as brain chemistry. What would you say brain chemistry is?
Yeah, so really, right now in psychiatry, the medication part of things, they focus a lot on neurotransmitters, and those are these little tiny, almost kind of like nutrients in your brain, and they can lead to different kind of feelings overall that you have in your brain. So if you have depression, for instance, usually there's a little chemical in your brain called serotonin, and it's in between all the little neurons in your brain, which are all the little cells that connect everything together. And some people, the serotonin, that's kind of this chemical that gets sent between all the little cells, is off, and so you take a medicine that helps that helps you have the right level of serotonin. So sometimes if people are really depressed and it's mainly just, it's not because of their circumstances, but like their body just isn't producing the right things, then they'll take a medication. And sometimes you'll have people that can barely get out of bed. They're so depressed, like all the time, and you'll get them the right medicine and it kind of livens them up. Those cells are able to function better, and you're able to make better connections in your brain, like maybe from your emotions to your memories. There's just different sections of the brain that need to connect together in order for you to function well.
And that's literally the definition of like chemical imbalance. That's what they mean by that, right? Like
when they talk about a chemical imbalance, yeah. And there's lots of different chemicals in there, so there's lots of different medicines. So,
okay. Question on that. I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because I think it kind of goes into a question that I got from somebody I was talking to last night. But I don't necessarily want to ask that particular question, but I'm gonna bring it up just to kind of help with the question that came up in just now from what you were saying. Right. So the question was basically, why is it difficult for people to stop being depressed when they have happiness around them? But my question is, even for that, is the chemical imbalance, is that maybe the reason why, but to that, like why people can't seem to maybe enjoy the happiness around them because of the chemical imbalance? And then with the chemical imbalance, what kind of happens for there to be, for things to get off balance like that?
Right. Well, so, I mean, gosh, it's a big question. So first of all, the one thing I'll say is, because I'm a psychologist and medicine it's not my specialty, I always lead with trying to help people develop skills and tools or ways of thinking or feeling or ways to interact with their community that would make them feel better. That's kind of that's my main goal. Like if people come to see me, I go that way first.
Okay.
Right. If it don't work, then you got to start thinking about, is it a brain chemistry issue? Is it a chemical imbalance, right?
So you see if you can get people healing without medicine first.
Yeah, if I can, because there are side effects with most of those medicines,
Right,
so you got to make sure it's the right thing. Yeah, so I guess, how do people get that way? Well, one is there is it is passed down in families in your genetics. Some.
Interesting.
Right? A lot of people have like bipolar disorder. That can get passed down through the generations. Even depression and anxiety, but there's a lot of bipolar disorder. There's a lot that gets passed down with schizophrenia, for example, when you hear and see things that aren't real. So there is number one is, what brain chemistry were you born with? That's a big piece. Or even if you're not born depressed, if you have a little bit of that in your brain chemistry and your genetics, like what got passed down, and then you come into some real hard life stuff, then maybe it will start coming out. Maybe you've been depressed your whole life, and then you get to be about 20 and all of the pressures of being a young adult hit you, then sometimes you'll start to suffer. It's almost like you didn't know it was in there, right? But I would say one of the biggest ways that things get off is from trauma,
Yeah.
right? So, and
I was
trauma is
thinking that.
different for each person. You know, trauma is a little bit in the eye of the beholder. So, you know, trauma can be if you get abused, you know, hit, yelled at, you know, sexually abused. I've had people have really bad traumas from really bad car accidents. Um, yeah, there's all different kinds of things that can happen to you. Sometimes it's like bad stuff that happens in your community leads to a trauma, or in your country of origin. Like if you grew up in a war-torn country. I used to see a lot of people who grew up in Syria when all the, you know, raids and bombings were going on, and some of the terrible things they saw. So, you know, trauma is really just, you have an experience where, you know, you're out in the world and then something really scary happens to you that rocks you to the core, and you just can't shake it. You know, it stays in your mind. You have nightmares about it maybe, or if you, like, let's say you hear a car backfire, you think it's a gunshot, and then your body gets really scared and your brain starts thinking that, you know, it's a gunshot, not a car backfiring. So there's a lot of what happens to people, I think, is trauma.
So from a physical standpoint, can the trauma like literally throw a chemical off in your brain?
Yeah.
It can
Yeah,
create a
can.
chemical
Yeah.
imbalance.
Right. Because if you think about it, like, let's use that, like car backfiring. You know, every once in a while a car will backfire, it'll make a loud noise. If you went through something where, like, you heard a bunch of gunshots and maybe somebody new got killed or hurt, you know, your body is always going to be ready for that to happen. Like your brain is going to say, okay, we're going to make sure that never happens again. And so anytime that happens, all of your survival instincts will kick in, right? And that means all the chemicals in your brain that are there to help you in a survival situation will flood into your brain. You'll get really ready to, you know, either fight or flight, right? Run or go towards it and fight through it. Actually, your body doesn't digest food as well, right? Because it doesn't want to be digesting food when you need all that power to make sure you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Right? So everything in your body will learn to react to something that reminds you of the bad thing you went through, including your brain. So, but the problem is, you don't want to be ready to run from a gunshot or fight someone off every single day. You know, that wears you down. You want some peace. You want some happiness. You want some of those chemicals, not the fight and flight chemicals all the time. So your brain can really get stuck in some of that stuff.
What are some things that you maybe suggest for people who are dealing with depression, or, you know, just whatever it is that, you know, the trauma might have caused for them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you what are some tools that you I guess issued or empowered people with to use to kind of help them to get to that place where they're able to kind of like maybe like they're at a family gathering or something like that, and they're able to like you know, because they have those tools that they've been empowered with, they're able to kind of shake that off for the time being so that they can deal with it later and enjoy the right now happiness that's around them.
Right. Yeah. So, well, let's see. So part of what I was talking about, it has a little bit to do with trauma and PTSD, but some people get depressed with trauma. I guess I didn't add that. But, like, let's say you're out and about. What kind of tools do we use? Well, I think if you suddenly feel like a really strong fear response, I always tell people at a family gathering to kind of go into the bathroom. I teach people this kind of deep breathing technique where you kind of let your shoulders relax and you breathe in for about 7 seconds, and then you kind of make your lips real small, like you're blowing through a straw, and you breathe out for about 7 seconds. So
why do you make the lips small?
Well, because otherwise when you're stressed, you go like this. You take a deep breath, and then you go, you know, like you're out of breath, right? So I always make people make their lips small so that they make sure they're breathing out almost slower than they breathe in. And why are you doing that? Well, it makes your blood kind of the right level of oxygen, not too much, not too little, and that tells your brain, okay, we're safe, like everything's going to be okay. One of my friends who's into cars said, "Oh, it's like a carburetor, right? You want just the right amount of air in the car, so it's not, feeling sluggish, or it's not, getting too much air in there and misfiring, right? So it's kind of like you're doing this breathing technique in the bathroom, right? So you're not doing it out in front of everybody, to calm your body down, so you can kind of clear your head a little bit and then go on with what you're doing. Now that's trauma, right? Depression's a little tougher. Usually you gotta get to the bottom of what the depression's about. Usually there's something from your past or some way that you relate to people that really makes it so that you're not really processing your emotions right? So what I mean by that is, we're usually sad. Our main feelings are sad, angry, scared, or happy. And some of us really don't like feeling some of those, so we just push them down. Like some people had an angry dad and they never want to be angry.
Yeah.
So they just push that down. Or some people like to be hard. They never want to show they're scared, so they push that down. And then if you push those feelings down long enough, some people get real depressed, right? Because you got to find ways to express those feelings, or they get kind of stuck. So you go to therapy, or you learn different ways to write about your feelings, like journaling, things like that, because you got to get them out. Some people do artwork about their feelings. So those are different things, but you got to express. I always tell people, you got to learn how to express all 4 emotions. And most people, their family didn't like one of those emotions. Some people aren't even allowed to be happy. If you were too happy in your family, you were too good for everybody, right?
Dang.
Wow.
So sometimes with therapy, I got to teach people how to learn how to express happiness, either to themselves or other people. So
have you had clients that have like experienced that, where they were at one point maybe too happy for their family?
Yeah.
Wow.
Some it's tough. You never know what your family members have been through, but some of them don't. Some families, even if they don't mean to, they really push down on happiness. Now, it's tough. If you were a kid and you said, "Why don't you like it when I'm happy?" Your parents would say, "Well, that's not true. We like it when you're happy. We just don't like it when you're hyper. We don't like it when you're this or that," right? So our family doesn't always know what we're doing to our kids,
Right. So they might think they're just pushing away over excitement.
Right.
But they're actually pushing away genuine happiness.
Yeah.
Dang, that's interesting.
Yeah. And again, with these, a lot of these are my opinions. Other therapists work with this stuff a little different, but that's one of the big things I like to look at.
Oh yeah. In your experience, what has been the common denominator with people struggling to maintaining a healthy mentality?
Let's see. I guess the main one is really what I was just saying. I think it's kind of knowing what you're feeling and knowing how to express it, right? So because your feelings are there to kind of give you information, right?
Right.
They're there to say, "Oh, like if I'm sad, it means I've lost something," right? Or if I'm angry, maybe it means I've experienced injustice, Or if I'm scared, maybe it's because, someone really is out to get me. Now, we want to really understand when those are healthy or not. Sometimes, though, we have feelings that are like, too powerful. Like we get angry at like even the tiniest injustice, or we get scared, because we had something bad happen to us, but really it's just a car backfiring. It's not really a gunshot, So to me, you got to be able to identify your emotions, and you got to learn what to do with them, both within yourself, and then what do you do with them in your community?
Right.
Do you grieve as a community, right, and talk about what you've lost? Do you take your anger and find a way to create justice, but in a positive way, but without being violent? So I think that's the common denominator for me. What are you feeling, and then what do you do with it?
Right. Okay. Makes a lot of sense to me. What's your correlation between mental health and spirituality?
Let's see. So, man, that's a great question. So for me, it's really hard sometimes for me to separate those two. Because in my mind, even when I'm working with somebody who maybe doesn't believe in God, and I do work with a lot of people who don't, I am always just trying to understand what God loves about them, and
that's good.
who God created them to be, right? And I always tell people I'm really trying to understand who the person is, because in therapy sometimes we get really into, well, if we're just nice enough, then people will have a new friend and then they'll feel better. But that's not what therapy is, right? Therapy is like, to me, it's who is the person really? And some people, some people are kind of I don't know, they do have a lot of anger. Maybe they're a little more predisposed to that. But God can use that for good, right?
Yeah,
true.
What you do with it. Some people are more predisposed to fear. They think about fearful things all the time. And it's interesting, in mental health, usually we're just trying to get rid of that kind of fear. But for me, the spiritual part of it is, if the Apostle Paul is saying something like, I will glory in my weakness, right? Like, everybody wants to focus on my strengths, right? I was a Pharisee, had all this teaching, and he says, no, like, God can use my weaknesses just as powerfully as my strengths, right? And that's the difference for me. In mental health, usually what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the symptoms like depression or anxiety, and you're trying to get rid of them. And that's good, but every once in a while, underneath some of those symptoms, I think is kind of a weakness that God wants to redeem, So if you have a big anger problem, God can use that for good. He may have you go confront somebody that's really a bad dude, Now the key is you don't want to use that anger problem against your family, right? Or your community in a bad way. So obviously you want to do therapy, learn how to control that a bit if you're doing it in bad ways. But God will use some of those broken places for good. Even that part of you that could fly off the handle, God will find a good place for you to use that. So that's the difference. The difference for me is that God will use all of who we are, not just the good parts. Right.
So you kind of almost like try to bring people almost into what their identity is, try to give them identity, or try to figure out, because I do think that, like, if I had, DID, especially from watching the Many Sides of Jane, or even depression, like I fought depression a lot of my life, identity kind of like subsides that when you figure out who you are and you have a purpose, and that, like what you said, like one of your strengths could be used as weaknesses. Like, for example, one of the ways I take my depression is, I have a strong sense of empathy. Like, I can feel other people's pain, you know what I mean? So at first it used to depress me, but I kind of figured out, like, okay, this is possibly a gift from God, you know what I mean? That you can connect with people really easily. But you got to figure out how to turn that pain into peace, though. You can't just hold on to it. You know what I mean? You can't hold on to it like you used to. So I think that is, a lot of your work does kind of bring people into almost a new identity, right? Some of your patients.
Yeah. Here's the other big one for me that's a difference. So in mental health, maybe I'm sending them over to get some medication. Maybe I'm working on some thinking patterns that leads to depression. Like maybe they always see things negatively, or they always take things to extremes, and you work on the thinking pattern, right? But for me, sometimes, like, we'll take anxiety, for instance, right? Good anxiety is meant to help you. Like, let's say I got to, I don't know, let me think. Well, like, let's say I'm at school and I got to take a test. I feel anxious, right? But we can have good anxiety. I'm so anxious, I'm going to go study and study real hard. I'm going to use all that anxious energy to go study, right? The problem is when you're so anxious, you don't study at all and you avoid it, and you want to go like sleep too much, right? So then it's out of whack, right? So it's good to have, you do counseling and you understand, okay, you know, this is how you deal with that anxiety. Maybe you make a plan on how to study. Maybe you figure out that you know, that class in your major isn't necessarily, you know, your cup of tea, or maybe you get a tutor or something, right? You kind of problem solve some of that. However, the spiritual thing for me is sometimes under anxiety, what you'll find is that you have a gifting from God that the world has had you suppress. All right.
Interesting.
Right? So, like, let me
give me an example.
I will. Yeah. So here's an example. I have, every once in a while, I have people come in because they have nightmares, right? Or they have these really powerful dreams, and they'll say, I have these powerful dreams, you know, what do I do? Now, we do have a medication that's really good at taking away nightmares, if that's the main problem. But some people who have nightmares actually have either what I call a gift of intercession or a gift of prophetic vision.
Really?
Now, not everybody. Some people just have trauma. They were in a car accident, their brain's playing out all the bad things that happened to them, and you got to do therapy for that. Some people with nightmares or vivid dreams, I really do think that God is trying to use them in some way. So I've worked with
some people don't know what to do with it.
They don't.
They don't understand it.
Right, right. And usually with that kind of thing, it's a little like speaking in tongues. Like, you can't necessarily come up with all that on your own. You got to find someone like a Paul Kim that can interpret it with you, right?
Shout out to Paul.
you find, you know, like someone in your church, or you talk to your pastor about it, or you find a friend. But sometimes under those are gifts. So I'll give you one example. Was I had a patient who had these really dreams they thought were really terrifying, and I was like, well, tell me about them. They're like, well, one of them, like, I'm in my bed and all of a sudden I float out of my bed and I'm looking at myself, and then I float out of the room, and like I can see everything that's happening around me.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And then I wake myself up because I'm so scared, you know, because I don't want to keep floating up and seeing everything. And with that person, I said, well, hey, I just had this feeling from God. I just said, hey, you know, if you can, just see if you can keep floating and see if maybe God wants to show you something, right? So this person floats out of their body, and the next time they have the dream, they go up through the ceiling, and then they stop again. They're like, nope, God, and they wake themselves up, right? It's working. You know what I mean? But the third time it happened, they let themselves go up there, and they would tell you that they saw the glory of God.
Seriously?
They saw the
wow.
of God. Now, we all say we want to see that stuff, but we all know in the Bible, man, people see that stuff, they fall on the ground.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
Help me. I'm
Right.
a man of unclean lips, right? Help me. Help me, right?
Yeah.
I think some people, they want to say,
about the gifts God gives us, right? I have another patient who sometimes will kind of sense when something bad is going to happen in the culture.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they'll have these nightmares, and the nightmares don't necessarily, they're not really clear, like they're a little distorted and strange. But the interesting thing is they'll have kind of a sense that something that's going to hurt people or hurt a community is going to happen. And they'll have maybe a strange dream about like wolves chasing someone down. Or but when they wake up and they talk with someone about it, sometimes they come to understand the meaning that God has with it. But can you imagine having a dream about wolves chasing someone down and trying to kill them?
Yeah, yeah.
And what would it be like with all these kind of recent things in the news before all those things happen, where people are getting killed by cops, and you suddenly have these dreams about wolves over and over again?
I know, right? That's interesting.
Right? You start having dreams like that, and you're scared, and you don't know what to do with it. Now, here's the thing. We have a God that gives us, he never gives us more than he can handle, right? Sometimes it's more than we can handle, but it's never more than he can handle. That's my belief. All right?
Okay.
Interesting.
Because we're human, so we're going to make mistakes, but he'll never give us more than he can handle on our behalf. So our role with that stuff usually is God'll have us, he'll let us participate with this gift. Like I said, like sometimes you may see a prophetic vision, sometimes you might have other things. And then our role is usually just to pray. God, show me what to do. Show me who to pray for. Show me if there's one person in my life today that I can share this with, that it would be important to share it with. So the actions aren't always real big. God will create the opportunities. Your job is just to ask for God to give you the faith and the courage and the spirit to hang in there with the gift.
Yeah.
I'll give you one other example, and I don't think my wife will mind me sharing this. She has a gift of intercession. And what does that mean? She'll have visions, or she will have dreams about people, or she won't be able to sleep, right? And when she has that, what she learned from Paul Kim, right, is she learned that Christ has kind of a deep feeling towards that person, or wants to communicate something to that person. So her role is, when she has a dream or a vision or is up at night, is just to pray for that person until she feels peace. Right?
Wow.
And you know what's happened to her before? What's happened to her before is she's done that, and the next day the person will call her and say, I had the craziest feeling last night and I couldn't get it off my mind, and the only thing I could think of to do was to call you this morning. Right?
Wow.
Let me tell you how crazy this is. So one time I was letting
Wait,
Paul
who is
talk.
he?
Paul.
I just wanted you to say it.
I had so I teach a life training class, and Paul taught my class for a month. And there was one night he was talking about intercessory prayer, and he told a story. He could have been talking about your wife, I don't know, but he didn't say any names. But he told a story about somebody, and I believe he said it was a woman. But anyway, same thing, like stayed up late at night, couldn't go back to sleep, and he would just advise that person to pray. And he told a story about one time where that person was at a conference or something like that, and the woman who stayed up late at night was told to pray like about tires or something of the sort. Are you familiar with the story? Are you?
No, it's not my wife, but I think I've heard this from Paul. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. And turns out the people who arrived at the conference the next day was in a car accident, or they had car trouble getting there. But somehow, some kind of way, they were able to find tires for cheap. They had a tire that was messed up. They were able to find tires for cheap. Yeah. And all she knows is that she prayed about it, It's like,
dang.
And it was crazy because as he was teaching it, there was somebody in my class who just hit me up the day before and told me, like, Dre, I'm staying up late at night again. God might be trying to speak to me. I don't know what's going on. Like, I can't sleep. And this is somebody who's used to being woken up in the middle of the night and praying for people. And she was like, it's happening again, Dre. And the next day, Paul teaches that class. And she was texting me as he's talking, like, what the heck is going on? Like, how does he know what's happening? You know what I mean? It was a crazy experience. So I was like, man, it's interesting once you add Paul to your life.
Right.
But yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so
I love your take on spirituality, man, because I think that, it's awesome to have somebody that's in that type of field that understands that implication, onto somebody's mental health issues.
Right.
Because I think sometimes we could chalk it all the way up to science and miss something, miss something incredible.
That's true. Yeah. So you can imagine how anxious you'd feel if you didn't know you had that gift, right?
Right.
Yeah. And my wife, she had a lot of anxiety as a teenager, and a lot of it was about some of those things at night, and it's because she didn't know, right? She just didn't know yet that was in there, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have both, so that's the key. We got to be careful as Christians, I think, to not just say, okay, well, it's one or the other, right? A lot of times it's both. You need to both do the mental health part of it and work that out, and there's a spiritual piece.
Right.
Interesting.
as believers sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been one of those people who have like had dreams. Like there was one dream, literally as you were talking a little bit ago. I had a dream of this guy that I knew from when I was like in my teenage years,
Right.
and I think the guy was either about to get jumped or something like that. But there was also a gun. Like they were trying. I don't know if it was two different dreams or if this was the same dream. But the guy was like being attacked, and it was like one of the craziest dreams I ever had. And at this time, I was having like a lot of like vivid dreams. But this one in particular, like it was like, yo, like watch out, bro. Like you know what I'm saying? And like I don't. It was a form of attack. I don't remember if the weapon was a knife or a gun, or if it was the gun and the knife was in the same dream or whatever. But it was just that like I remember I shared the dream with somebody. I think matter of fact it was one of the pastors I was up under at the time, and she told me to pray for him. So I remember doing that, but it was just crazy to me because it's like it kind of felt like an out of body experience. Like I was somewhere that may have actually been like at that time, but then at the same time it could have been like a forewarning of what was possibly about to happen, or maybe because sometimes dreams are symbolic too, so it may not necessarily be like exactly what you see when you see it. It could be that the form of attack or it could be like maybe like for instance, if it was a dream and you see somebody attacking somebody from behind with a knife, that could just be a symbolism for somebody's getting ready to betray that person.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just different ways to look at it, but it's definitely I think talking about this is definitely something that's helping people who not just deal with trauma or depression, but also people who have spiritual gifts. A gift of intercession, a gift of seeing of being a seer, or some type of prophetic gift. Like it's real. Like it's not just like you said one or the other. You know what I'm saying? And probably for some people it's both. It could be both a reality thing or a natural thing, if so to speak, or it could be at the same time you got the spiritual gift and you just got to learn how to kind of look. I guess I don't want to say separate the two necessarily, but in a sense separate the two, where it's like, okay, you understand this time it's not the spiritual gift, this time it's an actual physical thing going on with me, or this time it is the spiritual gift and it's not this over here.
Right. Yeah, it takes discernment, right? It ends up being a lot like speaking in tongues. Like the person themselves can't always interpret it. Sometimes you can with God, but sometimes you need that other person because it's so overwhelming, right? Sometimes experience. Yeah. So that's a tough thing. So it does have to be separate. I can't bill an insurance company necessarily when I'm being a psychologist to kind of just focus on their spiritual gifts.
Right.
So I do have to parse that out a little bit, because I got to be honest, right?
Right.
But so there is a distinction, but I always at least try to keep all that in mind.
Right.
And if the person's a believer or wants to talk about God, then I jump in. But I really try to pull from what their own experience and ideas are, and try not to influence them too much. Now, if it's just stuff in the context of church, or if the person has a similar, faith tradition as me, then I feel a little more freedom to jump in and do some of that.
Right. I would imagine so. Yeah. It's just, I think I have a belief that believers are supposed to be placed in these different contexts of culture to kind of bring people close to God, even if it's subtle. You know what I mean? So I think it's dope that God has placed you in that area, the area of psychology, to kind of reach out to people, because I think the church has not done a great job on handling mental health. You know what I mean? You don't learn too much.
No, not at all.
You don't really learn too much about it.
Yeah.
So somebody that's professional.
It's interesting. The church seemingly, at least most churches I've been to, they seem to have a I'm already swimming with the sharks already, so it don't matter at this point.
All right.
The church seemingly has a ministry for every other thing but mental health.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is there's a department or a ministry for nurses to be active in, or there's a you know, for money. There's one for the men. There's one for women. There's one for, you know, all these different things. Which I'm not knocking that, but I'm saying that I'm piggybacking off of what Dre said and saying, hey, there's a lack for something that's very necessary right now, because even pastors, if nothing else, they just need to be able to rest their minds. But because there's a lack of understanding, hey, you don't need to be running around all over the place. You don't need to be doing this and don't need to be doing that, especially without the appropriate amount of rest. And I think that people think physical rest is the only form of rest there is.